In the heart of a peaceful Nigerian city, something unspeakable was about to unfold in the home of a man named Pastor Lanso Edib. Lanso was admired by many. His sermons were powerful, his voice deep and commanding, and his presence magnetic. He led a thriving church congregation and lived in a modest but warm home with his wife, Temra, and their 4 beautiful children. On the outside, it looked like the perfect family: devoted parents, disciplined children, and a home brimming with faith. But beneath this portrait of holiness, a secret festered, one so shocking, it would rip everything apart. Lanso had grown up in Inato, a small southeastern town where life was simple but tough. His father was a farmer, his mother a local seamstress, and together they raised 6 children on little more than hope and sweat. From a young age, Lanso showed something different: a stillness, a strength, and a voice that made even adults pause when he spoke. His shyness didn't stop people from noticing him. When he turned 17, he led a youth prayer meeting that left everyone in stunned silence. That night many whispered, "He's been called." He obeyed the call. While attending seminary in Lagos, he remained focused and driven. It was at a university fellowship meeting that he met Temra, a fiery, playful young woman with a sparkle in her eyes. She had grown up more comfortably than he had, the daughter of a retired civil servant. After Lanso's sermon, she approached him and laughed, "For a man so serious, your face needs a holiday." Lanso blinked, startled, then smiled. "Maybe I'm waiting for someone to give me a reason." From that moment, something shifted. Their courtship lasted just over a year. He, steady and soft-spoken, she, bold and curious. Their balance worked. They married in a humble ceremony surrounded by family and friends. Over time, Temra grew into the role of a pastor's wife with grace. Though her wild edges softened, her sharp wit and warm heart remained. The couple was soon blessed with 4 children. Duru, the eldest at 14, quiet and observant like his father. Era, their only daughter, 12 and full of music. And the twins, Jomi and Kelu, inseparable 8-year-olds with a flair for mischief and laughter. Their home sat on a calm street in Lagos, painted in soft yellows and always smelling faintly of fried plantains and lavender. Family portraits lined the walls: wedding day smiles, holiday moments in matching outfits, joyful church celebrations. Every evening, they gathered at the dinner table where Lanso led them in prayer, his voice rich with gratitude. Temra served the food with a soft smile, and the children chattered about school and songs and scraped knees. These dinners were sacred, not just meals but rituals of connection. The image was flawless. At least it seemed so. But being the head pastor of a fast-growing Pentecostal church came with pressure. Lanso was pulled in all directions. His sermons brought in thousands. His prayers were said to work miracles. People lined up every Sunday just to hear him speak. Amid the church crowd stood one man Lanso always listened to, Pastor Temo Dacre, his mentor. Temo had guided him from the start, had laid hands on him during his ordination, and was a fixture in their home. He laughed with the children, shared old wine with Lanso, and offered advice over evening meals. Temra, though always polite to Temo, seemed overly attentive sometimes. Lanso had once noticed her glancing at Temo longer than necessary, a quick look that lingered. He brushed it off. It had to be admiration. After all, Temo was a revered man, tall and confident, with the charm of a man who had lived many lives. Lanso never doubted his wife, or his mentor, until the day everything broke. It was a Monday in early December, with Christmas approaching. The Edib home buzzed with excitement. Duru had begged to take his bicycle out for a spin despite the usual warnings. He promised to stay close, to be careful. But that morning he pedaled further than usual, laughter in the wind, unaware of the car speeding around the bend. The collision was brutal. He was rushed to the hospital unconscious, bleeding, barely breathing. The call came. Lanso and Temra dropped everything and ran. The hospital air was thick with antiseptic and panic. Duru lay on the bed, tubes in his arms, his face pale and still. "Doctor, please," Lanso begged. "Save my son." The doctor, calm but urgent, replied, "He needs a blood transfusion immediately. Do you know your blood types?" Lanso stepped forward. "I'm O positive." Temra, her voice shaking, said, "AB." The doctor nodded, sent for a test. Minutes passed like hours. When the doctor returned, his face was grave. He held the chart like it was fire. "Pastor," he said gently, "your son is a positive. Based on your blood types, you cannot be his biological father." Silence. Then came the ringing in Lanso's ears. "That's not possible," he said. "Check again." The doctor shook his head. "We have. Twice. Temra is the boy's mother. But you are not his father." Time stopped. The lights flickered above them. Temra's hands trembled. She said nothing. And for the first time in years, Pastor Lanso felt like a stranger in his own story. Lanso didn't speak. He couldn't. His mouth was dry, his chest tight. He just turned to the doctor and said softly, "Make sure he gets what he needs. Save him." Then he walked beside Temra, who looked like she was sinking into the floor. The drive home was silent. Lanso's hands gripped the wheel as if it was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. Temra sat with her hands folded in her lap, her eyes downcast. Not a single word passed between them. When they reached home, Lanso stepped out slowly. "We'll talk later," he said, his voice like ice. Temra only nodded. That night, sleep abandoned him. Lanso sat in his study, the house dark and too quiet. The image of Daru lying pale in that hospital bed haunted him. But it wasn't just the fear of losing a child, it was the fear that the child might never have been his. "Why?" he whispered into the silence. He replayed memories, Daru calling him Daddy, their first football game, the school open days, the hugs after evening devotion. Could all of that be fake? Could everything he believed be a lie? As the first light crept in through the curtains, he made a decision. He needed the truth, all of it. He rose quietly and moved through the house like a shadow. From each bedroom he collected toothbrushes, hair strands, anything he could find. Jomi, Kelu, Era, he took samples from them all. Then he locked them safely into a small bag and drove to a private DNA testing lab. The technician raised an eyebrow. "All 4. "Yes," Lanso said. "Compare them to me." His voice was low and flat. The technician nodded. "Come back in 3 days." As Lanso stepped out into the sun, his soul felt darker than the night before. Those 3 days passed slowly. Temra tried to speak with him several times. "Lanso, please. Let's talk. I can explain." He would only look at her once, then walk away. She followed him one evening into the kitchen, her voice trembling. "I never meant for any of this to happen." But Lanso just picked up his Bible and left the room. The children had been sent to their grandmother's house. Lanso didn't want them to see what was coming. On the 3rd day, when the lab called, he picked up the envelope with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He locked himself in the study again. He didn't pray. He didn't breathe. He just opened the envelope and read. 1 page, 4 lines. Each line stabbed deeper than the last. Daru, not his. Era, not his. Jomi and Kelu, not his. Not a single child bore his blood. The paper slipped from his hand and floated to the floor like it didn't just carry a bomb. Lanso stared into space, numb. The pain was too big to hold. "They're not mine," he whispered. "None of them are mine." That night, Temra found him seated in the dark. The only light came from the moon, falling across his face like a scar. "Lanso," she said, voice broken. "I never wanted this. Please let me explain." He stood up slowly. "Explain?" His voice cracked. "Explain what, Temra? That I've been raising another man's children for 14 years? That every moment of joy was a lie?" Tears ran down her face. She fell to her knees. "I'm sorry. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake that spiraled." "Who?" he asked. Just that. One word. "Who is their father?" Temra's mouth opened, then closed. Her breath came in gasps. Please don't ask me that." Lanso took a step forward. "Who?" he repeated louder. She looked up at him, shaking. It's Pastor Temo." Time froze. Lanso's body stiffened. "Temo?" he whispered. "Temo Dacre? His mentor. His friend. The man who ordained him. The one who held his son at naming ceremonies. The man who laid hands on his wife in prayer. That Temo?" A low, terrible sound came from Lanso's throat. A groan mixed with disbelief. Then he snapped. He lunged. He didn't see Temra's face. He didn't see his home. He saw betrayal, darkness, a world crashing down. He struck her. Once. Twice. Again. Her screams filled the house but couldn't break through his rage. She tried to shield herself, but he was too far gone. When he finally stopped, she wasn't moving. Her face was swollen, bleeding, lifeless. Lanso staggered back, chest heaving. What have I done?" he whispered. Temra's body lay crumpled on the floor, silent and still. Blood pooled beneath her. The room smelled of copper and regret. Panic swallowed Lanso whole. He crouched beside her and tried to shake her awake. "Temra, get up. Please." But she didn't. Her head lolled. Her chest did not rise. And then it hit him, she was dead. His wife. The woman he had once loved deeply. The mother of the children he now knew weren't his. And in that moment, something inside him broke again. No, No, no. What followed was madness. Cold, calculated madness. Lanso dragged her body to the bathroom. He locked the doors and ran to the garage. He returned with garbage bags, a bottle of bleach, and a machete. His hands were shaking, his body numb, but his mind raced. I have to fix this. I have to hide it. He whispered those words like a prayer. He stood over her one last time. I'm sorry, he said softly, almost lovingly. Then he raised the machete. It took several brutal swings before her head came off. Blood sprayed, but he didn't stop. He worked with methodical silence, as if he were cleansing the house of his shame. Lanso wrapped each part of Temra's body in large garbage bags. The smell of blood, bleach, and sweat filled the house. His clothes were soaked. His hands, once raised in prayer, were now stained with death. He cleaned the bathroom frantically, scrubbing until his knuckles were raw. Then he backed his car into the garage and loaded the bags into the trunk. Everything felt like a blur. As he slammed the trunk shut, his heart pounded like a drum of war. He thought he had done enough. But there was something he didn't know. Moments before their fight turned deadly, Temra had made a phone call. Temra had phoned her closest friend, Zara, while Lanso was still silent and cold. Her voice had trembled. Zara, I messed up. I don't think I'll make it through tonight. If anything happens, please come. That was all she said before ending the call. Zara had rushed out of work and headed straight to the Edib home. But by the time she arrived, the house was silent. Strangely, the door was unlocked. Zara stepped in cautiously. Temra, she called. Hello? Are you here? No answer. The scent of bleach hit her first. Then she saw faint drops of blood. Her heart dropped. Zara followed the blood trail, down the hallway into the bathroom, then to the garage. Her breath caught when she saw a large, dark stain on the concrete floor. Panic shot through her. She bolted from the house, pulled out her phone with trembling hands and called the police. Please, she gasped, you need to come now. I think something terrible has happened. Meanwhile, Lanso was on the road, driving with the wind screaming through his window. He was heading to one place, Pastor Temo's house. His grip on the steering wheel was tight, knuckles pale, eyes wide and unblinking. Everything inside him screamed betrayal. Years of friendship, laughter, prayers and counsel, all a lie. The children, the meals, the sermons, all poisoned by one man. He didn't even know how long the affair had lasted. He didn't care. All he wanted now was confrontation. Truth. Blood if necessary. A knife lay hidden beneath his jacket. His soul had already drowned in darkness. What more could he lose? Temo lived in a quiet, gated estate. His house stood still, lights on. When the doorbell rang, he looked through the peephole and saw Lanso. Ah, what a surprise, he said as he opened the door. Come in, brother. But there was a flicker of concern in his voice. Perhaps he sensed something. Maybe Temra had tried to reach him. Or maybe it was the look in Lanso's eyes that had no light left. Are you alone? Lanso asked. Yes, Temo said slowly. Just me. Before Temo could take another step, Lanso pulled the knife. You betrayed me, he growled, the blade gleaming under the light. You stole my life, my family, my peace. Temo's eyes widened. Lanso, wait. Let me explain. Please? Explain what? Lanso roared. That every time you hugged my children you were hugging your own? That you laid hands on my wife, in prayer, and in bed. Temo's hands rose in surrender. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was weak. It was a mistake. Lanso's voice cracked. They were all I had. He stepped forward, his grip tightening. Temo backed away, sweat now gathering on his forehead. Lanso, think about this. You're a man of God. God. Lanso spat. Where was God when you destroyed my life? Temo's eyes darted to the phone on the table, too far away. He took a deep breath. Please. If you do this, there's no going back. There's no going back already, Lanso whispered. Then he lunged. The blade sliced through Temo's shirt, cutting into his side. Blood spilled instantly. Temo gasped and stumbled back, clutching the wound. Why, Temo? Lanso shouted, trembling. Why did you do this to me? Temo collapsed against the wall, pain written across his face. I don't know. I failed you. I failed God. I was weak. But unknown to Lanso, Temo had dialed a number before opening the door. His closest friend, Asa. And the phone had remained on the table, on speaker, recording everything. Asa, hearing the fight unfold through the call, had immediately called the police and given them Temo's address. Meanwhile, Temo lay bleeding, his breathing shallow. Lanso, it's over, he whispered. I'm sorry. Lanso turned toward the window, startled by the rising sound of sirens. Blue and red lights flickered outside, getting closer. He stepped back from Temo, the knife still in his hand, now dripping. No, he whispered. Not yet. Then came a loud bang on the door. Police. Drop the weapon. A voice thundered from outside. The door burst open. Armed officers rushed in, weapons drawn. Hands up. Now. Lanso stood frozen. The knife slipped from his hand, clattering onto the floor. He raised his arms slowly, his eyes empty. 2 officers pinned him down while others ran to Temo, who lay groaning, still conscious but fading. Please, don't hurt him, Temo muttered. Lanso didn't resist. He didn't speak. As he was dragged outside, flashing lights bathed him in a surreal glow. Neighbors peered from windows. Nobody could believe what was happening. But it was real. Every bit of it. Lanso was led into the back of a police van, his head bowed, his hands cuffed behind him. He didn't struggle. He didn't cry. He just sat there, eyes vacant, as officers murmured to each other in disbelief. Is this really Pastor Lanso Idib? One whispered. The one from the revival crusades? Another asked. But Lanso didn't hear them. In his mind he was back at the dinner table, blessing food for a family that was never really his. The echo of his children's laughter haunted him more than the sirens. Temo was rushed to the hospital. He survived the attack, but barely. The blade had punctured his side, narrowly missing vital organs. In the hours that followed, he was visited by detectives, journalists, and even some of his stunned church members. But the man who once stood proud on a pulpit now lay in a hospital gown, pale and ashamed. The weight of guilt settled heavy on his chest. When asked about the affair, he didn't deny it. It happened. I was wrong. I betrayed a brother. That was all he said. Again and again. Word spread quickly. Newspapers, blogs, and television channels lit up with the scandal. Prominent Lagos pastor arrested for wife's murder. Church elder in love triangle exposed. The once beloved Pastor Lanso was now a national conversation. Temra's body, or what remained of it, was found in pieces. Her friend Zara identified her through her wedding ring. A wave of sorrow swept through the community. Congregants wept. Some didn't believe it. Others said they always suspected something was wrong behind the perfect smiles. But no one could ignore the truth anymore. The trial began 2 months later. The courtroom was packed. Journalists filled the front rows, their cameras clicking constantly. Lanso sat still, his face unreadable. Temo entered on crutches, his head low. The prosecutor painted a picture of calculated rage. A man who murdered his wife and nearly killed his friend. But it was the evidence that silenced the room. DNA results, phone records, and then Temra's journal. Each entry was read aloud by a trembling court officer. They were pages filled with guilt, fear, and deep regret. One entry read, "Every time I look at Lanso, I feel like I'm drowning in shame. He's too good. He deserves better. I don't know how to undo this. If he finds out, I fear what he might do." Another, written just days before her death, said, "I want to tell him. But how do you tell someone that none of his children are his? I'm terrified." The courtroom sat in heavy silence. Zara sobbed quietly in the gallery. Even Temo turned away as tears welled in his eyes. No one had expected things to end this way. When it was Lanso's turn to speak, he stood slowly. His voice was low, almost hollow. "I gave my life to God, to my church, to my family. I trusted them both. And in one night it all collapsed. I don't know who I am anymore. I didn't plan to kill her." I snapped. I was hurt beyond words. His lawyer pleaded temporary insanity. The judge didn't look convinced. He simply stared at the man before him, the broken man who once inspired a city. Pastor Temo was also called to testify. He walked up to the witness stand slowly, limping. He looked at Lanso with watery eyes. "I failed you," he said plainly. "I failed everyone. I destroyed what we built. I deserve every consequence." He didn't ask for pity. He didn't shift blame. And yet, his words cut through the court like a blade. Everyone could feel the depth of his guilt. But it didn't erase what had been done. When the verdict was finally read, the silence was absolute. "Pastor Lanso Idib, for the murder of your wife Temra and attempted murder of Pastor Temo Dacre, this court sentences you to life imprisonment." There were gasps in the room. Zara covered her mouth and wept. Temo lowered his head. Lanso said nothing. He just nodded once. A single slow nod. As the guards led him out, he looked back only once. Not at the crowd, not at Temo, but toward the empty chair where Temra should have been. In the months that followed, Temo's life crumbled. His church was empty. His home was sold. He moved away from Lagos, disappearing from public view. No one knew exactly where he went. Some said he moved to a small village to farm. Others claimed he joined a silent retreat to atone for his sins. All that was certain was this: the man who once mentored giants had fallen, and he carried the weight of his choices like a cross on his back. And the children? They were the ones most forgotten in the public frenzy. Duru, Era, Jomi, and Kelu, all now orphans in a sense. They were taken in by Temra's older sister, Aunt Nifa, who lived in Kaduna. She didn't have much, but she had a kind heart. She enrolled them in new schools, changed their last names, and tried to shield them from whispers and stares. But children remember. They remember blood. They remember silence. And most of all, they remember betrayal. How their story unfolds, that part no one knows yet. In Aunt Nifa's small bungalow, things were quiet, too quiet. Duru barely spoke. He often sat by the window staring at nothing, his fingers tapping his knees. Era, who used to sing loudly through the hallways of their old house, now hummed softly to herself in corners. Jomi and Kelu stopped playing pranks. Their laughter, once constant and contagious, had vanished like smoke. At night, they huddled together in one room, whispering questions they were too afraid to ask out loud. Why did Daddy hurt Mummy? Was Pastor Temo really our father? Do we even belong anywhere anymore? Aunt Nifa did her best. She cooked, she prayed, she told them stories of when their mother was young, the good parts. She never mentioned Pastor Temo. She never mentioned Lanso. But children feel things. They heard the whispers in school. They noticed how adults looked away when they entered a room. Era once returned from class with tears in her eyes. They said our mum was murdered by our dad because she was cheating. Nifa hugged her tightly. They don't know the whole story, she said. But neither did Era. Not fully. One day, a letter arrived from the prison. It was from Lanso. Nifa read it first, then left it on the kitchen table. If you want to read it, it's there, she said quietly. None of the children touched it for days. Finally, Duru picked it up. He read it alone. The letter was full of regret. I failed you, it began. But please remember that every bedtime story I told, every meal I cooked, every prayer I said for you, those were real. Even if my blood doesn't run in your veins, my love always did. The letter ended with one request. Don't carry my sins. You are not my mistakes. You are your own story. Duru didn't cry. He simply folded the paper and handed it to Era. One by one they read it. No one said anything afterward, but something in the air felt different. Jomi whispered to Kelu that night, maybe he did love us. Maybe that part wasn't a lie. Kelu didn't respond, but he held his brother's hand a little tighter. Back in Lagos, the church building that once echoed with songs and sermons now stood mostly empty. A for sale sign hung outside. People walked by quickly, unwilling to look too long. What once stood as a sanctuary of hope had become a place of whispered tragedy. Some said they still heard crying from inside on quiet nights. Others said it was just the wind. Either way, nobody went near the place anymore. The pulpit remained untouched, and the Bible that once belonged to Lanso still lay open, pages yellowing. Zara, Temra's best friend, tried to move on. She changed jobs, left the estate, and stopped attending church for a while. But grief has a way of following you even in silence. She often replayed that final call in her head. If anything happens, Temra had said. And something had. Something unspeakable. One day, Zara visited the children in Kaduna. She brought them books, hugged them tightly, and told them, "You're stronger than you know." Era smiled faintly. "Maybe," she replied. "But I don't feel it yet." Temo, far away now, sent no letters. No messages. Nothing. Some believed he had gone mad. Others believed he had found God again, truly this time. But no one could say for sure. One day, a man who resembled him was spotted at a small rural church in Jos, sweeping the floor after service. When someone asked, "Are you Pastor Temo?" he only smiled and said, "I used to be someone by that name." Then he walked away. The world had moved on. New headlines replaced the old ones. But in some places the scars remained deep. The children grew older, quieter. Their laughter came back in small moments, a joke at dinner, a funny movie, a memory of their mum singing while stirring soup. But some questions still lingered in their hearts like shadows that stretched across the years. Would they ever forgive? Would they ever truly belong again? Would they ever stop feeling like pieces of a broken story? Duru, now 17, kept a journal. He wrote down everything, not just memories but feelings he couldn't say out loud. One entry read, "Everyone wants me to heal. But I don't even know where the wound is." Another said, He wasn't my father by blood. But he was the one who made my lunch, carried me when I fell, and prayed for me every night. I don't know what to do with that. Sometimes he thought about writing to Lanso again. But he hadn't, not yet. And so, the story continues, not in courts or headlines but in the quiet days of those left behind. In dreams that still wake Era up at night. In the way Jomi flinches at raised voices. In the long silences that sit between Aunt Nifa's bedtime prayers. The truth is, this story hasn't ended. It lives on in questions still unanswered and hearts still healing. And maybe, just maybe, what comes next depends not on what was done but on what they choose to do with the pieces they now hold. Every story carries a lesson. If this one moved you, tap subscribe so you never miss the next twist in the journey.